Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Jason Fraser here, and today is going to be our last day of the weather school. But I got some good stuff for you. We're going to be talking about strange but really cool weather. As always, start off with a funny joke. So here's the joke of the day: Why were the vets and dog pounds mad? Because when they looked outside, it was raining cats and dogs. All right, that joke. As always, if you have any questions or maybe you have a funnier weather joke, you can feel free to email me at Jason Fraser at, at J Fraser at WKYC.com, or you can leave me a comment right below this video. Hey, you know what? Sometimes I just crack myself. Whatever. All right, so the class outline today is just really dedicated to showing you some really cool weather patterns and why they happen, and that's basically say goodbye. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is Virga. I love seeing Virga because what's interesting about Virga is when you look out, you see the clouds, and then it kind of looks like there's like these little like tentacles that like come out, and there's nothing happening below it. What Virga is, it's precipitation, right? So it's rain, or it could also be snow as well, but usually it's rain, and it never makes its way to the ground. What happens is that rain will come from a cloud, and then it'll encounter some dry air, and that dry air will make it evaporate before it even reaches the ground. Now, sometimes if you're actually standing under it, it looks also really cool because it kind of looks like it's, I don't want to say twinkling, but yeah, it kind of looks like there's rain above you, but like nothing's happening. So it's really cool to see. And as you can see in this picture here, you got the rain cloud, it's right here. You got the rain that's falling, and then the dry air is right there. So the people who are like right there, yeah, they're not seeing anything on the ground. They're just looking up and seeing clouds. Kind of cool. All right, now this one is a tongue twister. Okay, this is what we call the Fujiwara effect. Hopefully, I pronounced it correctly. Fujiwara effect. All right, and basically what this refers to are the behaviors of hurricanes. So periodically, in either the Pacific or even in the Atlantic, we will have hurricanes that will be either right behind one another or right next to each other. And what ends up happening is they end up kind of doing like a little bit of a dance. It's really interesting to see this on radar. But depending on which one is either stronger or which one is weaker, is what will happen to the other one. Now, what will happen usually is the smaller one, the smaller hurricane or the less powerful hurricane, will actually start to move around the larger hurricane. And eventually, what will happen is both storms will end up merging and creating what I like to call a superstorm, a super hurricane. That really does not exist. I don't want anybody on this video to say that Jason refers to two hurricanes that come together as super hurricanes because it's not a scientific thing. However, I do kind of like the term super hurricane. Right? That'd be cool. All right. Some of you have maybe also seen this haboobs. Usually with haboobs, they don't give any warning. Normally, it just kind of happens. You look up and you notice this huge cloud that's full of dust and debris, and it's heading towards you. Now, it can be thousands of feet high and dozens of miles across. So haboobs are really dangerous. Now, they don't really happen a lot here in Ohio. They can actually happen anywhere in any time. However, they usually are more common throughout the Southwest, places like Arizona, and even parts of California. They can also happen in other parts of the world, like the Middle East, as well as North Africa and Australia. You may be wondering, well, how does a haboob work? Like, how does it even happen? Well, usually with a haboob, you'll need a thunderstorm that is pretty much on its last leg, right? The thunderstorm is about to die off. And what happens is that thunderstorm is going to push out a lot of air, right? And we call that a downburst. And what will happen is as that downburst happens, maybe it's a macro burst, maybe it's a micro burst, you're going to get a huge gust of wind that's going to end up pushing this way. Okay. And what happens is, as it's doing that, it is going to simultaneously suspend either debris or sand or things in the air, and then it's going to push it forward. All right. The winds are so strong that it can actually push all of that dust and other debris way out into the atmosphere. Okay. So we can have haboobs that are moving at anywhere from 60 to 70, even 100 miles per hour. So they can be pretty fast, but if you are trying to outrun a haboob, yeah, good luck. It likely is not going to happen. Now, one of the largest haboobs to happen here in the United States was a couple of years ago. It was in July of 2011 in Phoenix, Arizona. The haboob was about 10,000 feet high and about 100 miles wide. This was according to a number of published reports by the Associated Press as well as the Huffington Post. The winds had approached 60 miles per hour. So what had happened was there was a thunderstorm that was outside the city. It was losing strength. And because of that downburst, it just pushed all of this air forward. Now, what ended up happening was because of all of that debris in the atmosphere, there were thousands of people that ended up not having power because of the wind that pushed forward. The other thing that it did, it also forced a number of airlines to delay their flights. So a number of people had to stay put. There was also a lot of damage to people's homes as well as their swimming pools because of debris. As you know, when sand is mixed in with water, it develops into like this muddy thing. Yeah, it's not really fun to look at. But that's essentially what happened here. People also had damage to their cars as well. Where people had to try and clean out their cars, and I would have also felt bad for people who left their windows open because they may have wanted to just get some fresh air and come to find out now you got a whole bunch of like sand and debris. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't know, but volcanoes, when they erupt, they can actually cause thunderstorms, especially like right above it. All right. And we know with thunderstorms how it works, or at least I should say, one widely accepted theory is the reason why the lightning happens with thunderstorms is because you have what we call charge separation as the ice is moving from one part of the cloud to the other, right? They're basically knocking into each other. There's static electricity that happens as a result of that. And then boom, you get the charges that separate. Well, pretty much something similar happens with volcanic lightning, where as the rocks are being pushed upward, and I'll say, yeah, I'll call them rocks. As the broken rocks are basically being shifted upwards, you also start to get all of those rocks that are knocking beside one another. And as a result of that, there's some electricity that happens. And that electricity obviously leads to the lightning that we see. Now, it is really, 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 really cool to see. I would highly recommend that if you have any time, go on YouTube and do volcanic lightning or volcanoes and lightning. And it's pretty interesting to see. I think that there was one recently, I think it was in Thailand, where you actually saw a volcano erupt and then you saw some lightning happen as a result. I think it was Thailand. One of my favorite types of clouds is something called lenticular clouds. I know that's a mouthful, but a number of people either see this when they're flying or maybe they're bypassing a mountain range. Now, let me say this up front. They are not flying saucers. They're not aliens spying on us, okay? Even though it does kind of look like a flying saucer, I'll admit that, but they're usually bright and white and circular, and usually they kind of hover above the mountain or they'll hover right above a building. Okay, that's usually pretty high. And the reason why that happens is because you have wind, or I should say air, that's pushed upward, and it ends up being cooled down, and then it ends up warming up again. And so as a result, you have this process happening all around either the mountain or the building, and that's where you start to get these. Last thing I'll talk about today is something called a land spout. And if you're looking at it and you're saying to yourself, man, it looks like a tornado. Yeah. So land spouts are actually tornadoes. They're a form of tornadoes. Some of you have heard me talk about water spouts. Well, water spouts happen where? On the water. Land spouts happen where? On land. Now, with land spouts, you don't need supercell thunderstorms. You just basically need a really, 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 really tall cumulus cloud and lots of wind. Now, I want to preface this by saying land spouts are not as dangerous as supercell tornadoes. They can still cause damage. Okay, so I don't want you to see a land spout and think, oh, it's safe. I can just walk right into it. No, they're still not safe. There's still debris that could potentially be swirling around there. But usually land spouts are confined to a very small particular area. And one of the things that can happen with land spouts is, especially when they initially form, sometimes you don't actually see them. They just start out as just looking as though like some debris is just flying around in a circle. And then eventually you'll start noticing that it'll start gathering debris or some dirt and it'll look like what you see right there in that picture. So, and by the way, what this guy's doing right here, don't ever do that. Okay. That's professional. All right, so this has been a very fun time to be with each and every one of you. I know that this has been a very challenging time during this pandemic. So I hope that throughout this weather school, you have learned something. And I really hope to hear from some of you guys if something happens, around the world and you're like, hey, I've never seen this, or how does this weather thing actually happen? Let me know and I will try to answer it. I admit I don't know everything. So if I don't know something, I will actually try and find the answer. You can feel free to hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, as well as Snapchat at Jason Fraser TV, or you can always feel free to drop me an email, jfrazer at wkyc.com. Have a lovely, lovely day and an even better summer.